Alright, this is the video I didn't want to have to make, ever, especially not on a Friday when I got things going on. But unfortunately, we did get word from Senator Shannon Grove. Unfortunately, SB712, aka Leno's Law, is now dead. It went back to Appropriations. Last week it went to Appropriations in the Assembly on the 20th. It was put in suspense. Went back to Appropriations today. And they determined it would cost too much money to implement. And one of the problems was they would have to pay someone at DMV to verify the collector insurance policies. Well, just get rid of the part about the collector insurance policies, like we've been saying. And I think there are other costs that that these different parts of the California state government came up with out of wherever to say it would cost to implement the bill, which, as we know, if they did implement the bill, not only would more vintage cars not be running Montana tags, but people would actually spending more money on these cars to fix them up, to restore them. They would take them to car shows and things like that, which contributes to California's economy, as we've discussed in the past. A lot of these cars have left the state because people are just generally afraid afraid of these cars. In many cases, 76 and later classics up to 1995, the ones that still get tested on the rollers. And we know it would have put more money back into the state to have these cars exempted, which I've argued in the past, but unfortunately the state of California does not see it that way. Now, this bill has been different for other bills in the past. This time we had Jay Leno involved with the bill, which kicked down doors enormously for us because before they wouldn't even listen to us. We didn't get past step one in the legislature. This time we actually got pretty far. We got all the way to Assembly Appropriations, nearing the finish line, although there were amendments added to the bill that most people who are into classic cars were not happy with, including collector insurance, and the collector plates would have required people to ditch their original license plates if they were still running them, such as I am on a few of my vehicles from that era. So now I guess it's back to square one. We're still in this, we still have problems. Like I said, 20 years ago, when Governor Schwarzenegger got rid of the rolling 30-year exemption, the car community spoke up and said, hey, this is going to be a problem in the future. We knew it was going to be a problem in the future as the number of these vehicles that still get the pre-OBD2 test diminish, which they have. And now we're actually seeing that. We got smog stations that don't want to test these vehicles. We've got equipment that goes down regularly. It's hard to get repaired. The costs for testing these vehicles has increased incredibly, and it's way more expensive to test a pre-OBD2 car than it is a newer vehicle, say 99 or 2000 newer, where they just get the plug-in under the dash. And it's become a problem. And we did a whole video on the Bureau of Automotive Repair meeting from, I believe it was June or so. And they know it's a problem. So this is what we have to focus on, I think, now in the future, is the costs and the cost of the state to keep the programs going, including the fact they want to have fewer stations doing the pre-OBD2 test, which is going to lead to higher costs to the consumer, probably higher costs to the state, and it's going to be a pain, especially if you have a lot of elderly people who still held on to their cars from that era. My mother passed away in December. She still had a 94 Mercedes that she bought new. My stepfather's still alive. He has a 1995 Toyota Camry, which my sister actually took to get smog for him. She had to go to 3 different smog stations before she gave up, and I found her one out by her that could smog test the car and had equipment that was working. So we know this is going to be a bigger problem if it is not addressed. The proper way to address it, that we feel, especially with the group Californians for Classic Car Smog Exemptions, would be a blanket pre-OBD2. That's 1995 and older vehicles should be blanket exempted, such as 1975 and older are now. They are classic vehicles. They are not used as much. You don't see them on the road nearly as much as you used to. Even my guy, I've actually had to get 2 of my vehicles from the 76 to 95 era smogged in the last week, believe it or not, so it's fun. My Mustang and my Suburban, both of which have a history of always passing smog. They passed smog again. The cost went up. So between the 2 vehicles, I spent $200 between the 2 vehicles getting those cars smogged. These are vehicles that pass every single time, every 2 years. The Mustang I've owned for 10 years. The Suburban, it's actually been a year and a half. When I bought it, it was actually half a year. They hadn't paid the registration. I had to pay back fees on that too when I first got it. So here we have these vehicles. They're passing smog every time, but the cost to smog them keeps going up. It's getting harder and harder to find stations that are willing to do that. I mean, I'm lucky I know a guy locally who's very good and fair, but he had to raise his prices because his costs went up. So this is going to continue to be a problem. This problem is going to get worse. Not sure how much higher the cost. I know in the Bay Area they're paying way more to smog these vehicles than they are down here. I'm not sure how much more these costs can go up. People are literally, car guys are good at that. We're good at figuring out solutions to problems. Unfortunately, the solution to all these guys have found is to register their vehicles out of state instead of continuing to register them in California, which how much is the state of California losing? And don't tell me they're going to go after these guys. They drive them on the weekends to car shows occasionally. They're not used as daily transportation. So unfortunately, that's going to continue to be a problem. That is the way to address it really is to just exempt 1995 and older vehicles, and that's the way I feel. Now, we're going to address the federal thing. Well, first we're going to address what I think we should do in the future, which is I think we need to start complaining. Every time you get your vehicle smogged and you see how much it costs, look on the wall, see how much it costs to do a 2000 or later vehicle, note the difference. Complain to Bureau of Automotive Repair. Don't complain about the specific station because they're a small business. They have to charge the extra because the equipment costs them extra, and there may be, if they're lucky, they might get 1 a day. A lot of them are doing 0 a day, as we saw from the Bureau of Automotive Repair data from the meeting. But complain to Bureau of Automotive Repair or complain to your legislature like, hey, why is this costing so much for me to smog a vehicle that gets hardly driven? My Mustang, I drove like maybe 2,000 miles a year, and the Suburban's roughly that as well. They are vehicles I mainly use for events such as car shows, the swap meet, the car swap meet, which is basically like a car show, or cruise nights and things like. In fact, I'm taking my Mustang to Bob's Big Boy tonight, just as soon as I get done filming this and getting it up on YouTube. All right, now someone's going to ask about this on the federal level. Now, none of the bills at the federal level have anything to do with emissions testing, local level emissions testings on classic vehicles for registration purposes. They are mainly about new vehicles starting with the 2027 model year. The CARB, I believe, didn't have to be a waiver for requiring emissions testing because that's considered like a state. That's the state's jurisdiction, not the federal. The only thing I can see is if they ever do it, which I haven't seen so far, is if the federal government comes in and says, hey, these are on a federal level part of our history. They need to preserve, such as they have a national in fact, my neighborhood is on the National Register of Historic Places here in Pasadena, since these are all craftsman homes. This house was built in 1915. But if something like that were to come out about at the federal level, then they might say, hey, you can't test these anymore. I don't know how that would work. I'm not a lawyer. But as of right now, everything we've seen at the federal level has nothing to do, none of it has anything to do with actual local emissions testing on classic vehicles. So, what are we going to do? We're going to keep the group going. Californians for Classic Car Smog Exemptions. It's on Facebook. We're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere except I'm going to film car shows this weekend. I'm going to Ventura tomorrow, and I'm going to Vista on Sunday. We're gonna keep fighting for this one. I think right now we need to make a plan. I have to think of something where we do a write-in campaign saying, hey, it costs too much to smog these things. Especially, it'd be great to get some of the elderly, senior people, low-income people that own these vehicles. In fact, the people that use them as quote-unquote transportation But I mean, they probably drive them like a couple thousand miles a year. They go to the grocery store or they go to the doctor's appointments, like elderly people, things like that. It'd be good to get them involved, even though they're not really classics. They're more used as transportation. Also, keep getting the guys who just use them as classic vehicles, primarily to shows and things like that, such as I do. Get them, keep them involved. Join the group, like I said, Californians for Classic Car Smog Exemptions. We do offer advice. There's a lot of smog techs in there, and they do offer advice for getting your car if you're having problems getting it through emissions testing. Sometimes they can offer you advice like, hey, check your vacuum lines, check your EGR, things like that. And it's always good to have that resource in the group. Hopefully we can get another bill introduced. Hopefully in the next few years would be great. People always want me to talk about political stuff. My opinion on political stuff, that's the one thing we have with the group. We got people from all sorts of political backgrounds, all sorts of backgrounds in general, and that's what makes it great. What I always say is, your duty as an American is to do your research before you vote on people, before you vote on propositions, things like that. Do your research before you go check in that box. Make up your mind on what it is and look at what the people and what the propositions are really about, especially the propositions. They like the word stuff kind of funky, and you got to really watch that. That's why they never got rid of the extra car tax and gas tax a few years ago, because they found a way to word it funky where you didn't know that's what you were voting on. So, but always do your research, and that's what I say. We got to get everyone involved with this one, no matter what your political affiliation is. People of all political affiliations love classic cars. They go to classic car events, and we'd like to keep it that way, and we like to keep these cars on the road. Like I said, off to Ventura Nationals tomorrow, Vista on Saturday. I don't expect to have any more smog news until maybe another bill is introduced, unless we get a campaign going to start a writing campaign. For now, this is what I got. I had to make a video real quick so people know that the bill is dead. Otherwise, I'm going to be hearing for the next couple of years until another bill is introduced. People who thought it went through, which it did not. So that's what I got for you. It's Friday afternoon. I got other stuff to do, but I'm glad I could get this for you guys. And until next time, I'll be seeing you.